Welcome to 8:48, the Committee for Lifestyle, Environment, Heritage and Resilience Committee. It's great to have everyone here. We've got a full contingent of councillors. Normally, just whenever we start this committee, we just acknowledge country. And so we acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional Aboriginal people of the land on which we gather, and we acknowledge all of their descendants. We also acknowledge the many Aboriginal people from other regions as well as Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people who now live in our local area, in our beautiful city, and have made an important contribution to our community now and in the past, and hopefully in the future. Let's kick off with attendance and apology. We have everyone, and we have no apologies, which is great. There are no leaves of absence. I need just the minutes from the last meeting confirmed. Someone like to move those? I've got Councillor Castro moving that and Councillor Martin seconding it. Anyone want to speak against the minutes being confirmed? Wow. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Are there any conflict of interest declarations today with the presentations that we have? No? Great. The forward planning schedule is part of the agenda, and it's the only start item. I would ask that someone just move that the forward planning schedule. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Curtis. Seconded, Councillor Wilkinson. Is there any debate? No. All those in favour? We've moved and sorted that one out as well. We have 3 presentations today, and in the practice that this committee has done over some time, some of those relate to broader work that's being undertaken by different, areas within the council, and one in particular is the Gold Coast Sports Precinct Concert Plan. But the first one we have on the list is the Cultural Heritage and First Nations Program. All of you have been provided a copy of the presentation, just in hard copy, if you'd like, but I'd like to invite the team to kick this off.
So good morning, councillors, Chair. My name's Anne McKenzie. I'm the Coordinator for Heritage and First Nations. I'm really excited to present today's topic, our Heritage and First Nations Service and Work Program highlights. The Heritage and First Nations Service is a new service for the city with newly formed work streams. We are a team of high-performing and dedicated professionals passionate about our city, our community, and our heritage. So the objective of today's presentation is that you come away with an understanding of our service and why we do it, so you can effectively engage with my team and communicate this also with your community. So over the next 15 minutes, I'll take you through our service. I'll outline the service drivers and explain 3 of the 4 work streams that deliver our service and highlight the work program. I'll be co-presenting with my colleague, Melanie Lavelle-Maloney. So Melanie is the city's First Nations engagement lead. So Mel will take you through the 4th work stream of First Nations engagement, how and why we engage, and close with an overview of the city's acknowledgement of country. As we move through this morning's presentation, I invite you to ponder the Gold Coast as a rich cultural landscape of layered First Nations and historic heritage places, stories, values, and connections, to reflect how cultural heritage underpins our sense of place and identity as a city, and how it makes a positive contribution to our well-being of our community. And embrace too that culture and heritage tourism plays an important role in building our visitor economy. And I'd just like to turn your attention here to our Gibberbilum Memorial Rock. So this is a place that's on our local heritage register. It's significant as the first memorial recognising the service of Indigenous men and women in our various conflicts. And I think it really epitomises our sense of shared heritage. Before we begin, just a little bit about myself. So my Māori, Scottish and Welsh ancestors journeyed across the oceans to make New Zealand and Australia home. My academic qualifications are in archaeology, cultural heritage and museums. And I've gathered skills and experience over the last 20 years working with community, national, state and local government in Australia and overseas. I'm passionate about bringing heritage to life and in the present through public purpose and partnership. So without any further ado, let's dive in. Service drivers are core to our service. Our Heritage and First Nations service is driven by legislative requirements, such as the Queensland Heritage Act, which requires local government to identify and protect local heritage, seek approval for works on Queensland heritage places, such as the former Southport Town Hall, and for the city to report state heritage finds of potential significance to Queensland. The Queensland Heritage Act also sets out the process for entering places onto the local heritage register. The Aboriginal Culture Heritage Act requires that the city avoids harm when undertaking its land use activities and does so in accordance with the duty of care. The Planning Act requires that we provide for the protection of the city's heritage and regulate its development, and recognise too the knowledge, culture and traditions of our First Nations peoples in our land use planning. Introduced in 2019, the Human Rights Act requires the city give effect to the cultural rights of First Nations peoples, including the right to enjoy, maintain and protect their heritage. There are also a suite of heritage standards and principles, as well as state government guidelines that drive our service, such as, for example, the Australian Ecomos Borough Charter, which sets out the principles for the protection, conservation and promotion of heritage nationally, and state guidelines that assist local government to give effect to First Nations interests in land use planning, and of course, not least, the expectations of the community. So now let's explore the work streams that deliver our Heritage and First Nations service. The Heritage and First Nations service is delivered through 4 distinct service streams, each with a dedicated lead. So we have Heritage Protection, led by Christian Moody, Heritage Conservation, led by Marshid Isbarami, Heritage Compliance, led by Andrew Allen, and First Nations Engagement, led by Melanie Lavelle-Maloney, who you will hear from later in this morning's presentation. The workstream service leads are experienced Heritage and First Nations professionals and the responsible officers for any councillor requests you may have. Under normal circumstances, we'll seek to respond within 10 business days, but sometimes some of your inquiries may be a bit more complex, so we may need a little bit more time. But please reach out to the responsible officer. Here you can see a photo of Duck's Hut on South Stradbroke Island. It's a place of local heritage significance entered in our register, recognising the role of the oyster industry to the community in the Gold Coast's early development. I'll now move on. So I invite you to journey with me through each of the 4 work streams and the highlights of the work program. So the first work stream I'll describe is heritage protection. So the heritage protection work stream outcome is that the Gold Coast First Nations and historic heritage is identified and protected. So under Christian's leadership, the heritage protection stream is responsible for 5 key areas: the local heritage register, including nominations, conducting surveys and assessments to identify heritage for protection, and is the Heritage and First Nations policy owner in our city plan, as well as assessing private development on local heritage places and integrating heritage and First Nations interests into the city's land use planning. Christian will be leading two very large bodies of work this year. Firstly, reviewing the Gold Coast Local Heritage Register, which will include making it more accessible and user-friendly. Presently, our Local Heritage Register has 84 entries. This is significantly less than most other councils in Queensland. Whilst it's not about quantity, it's about quality, it's really important that we are appropriately identifying and protecting our heritage. The second body of work is developing the Heritage and First Nations policy in our new planning scheme. The photos that you can see here demonstrate that heritage is diverse. It's not just about buildings, but it's also graves, trees, as well as landscapes, historic and First Nations heritage, both tangible and intangible. So when we talk about heritage, we're talking about all forms of heritage and the layers of values that make it significant. Let's move on now to our second work stream, heritage conservation. So the heritage conservation outcome is that the city actively manages, conserves and promotes its heritage and provides opportunities for community and visitors to engage. Under Marsheed's leadership, the heritage conservation stream is responsible for city assets managed for the heritage values. We have 61 heritage places owned by the city. In particular, providing for their conservation, adaptive reuse and promotion. Also fostering relationships with community-led museums for heritage outcomes. Delivering a heritage conservation advisory service to the community and connecting the public with our city's heritage through heritage trails, interpretive storytelling and experience. Over the years, the city has been the recipient of awards for its heritage conservation work, and my team is really looking forward to again establishing the city as a leader in this space. Heritage conservation work program highlights for this year include establishing baseline condition of city-owned heritage assets for conservation and planning and implementation, and establishing our conservation heritage advisory service for the community. Marsheed will also be scoping heritage trails, interpretive storytelling, and touristic opportunities to improve public engagement with our heritage. So let's pause for a moment. I've described heritage protection, heritage conservation work streams. Let's move on now to our third work stream, heritage compliance. So the heritage compliance work stream is dedicated to assisting city land use activities and projects. Its service outcome is ensuring that city works are statutory compliant and avoid harming First Nations and historic heritage in line with our duty of care. Led by Andrew, the heritage compliance stream drives the city's risk management through the full life cycle of city projects and activities, including due diligence assessment and Aboriginal party consultation and agreement making, and coordinates approval applications to the state for city development on Queensland heritage places, such as, for example, the former Southport Town Hall. It's important to note that the heritage compliance workstream does not provide advice on native title matters, and we do not undertake native title assessments. This is done by another area of the organisation. In terms of work program highlights, Andrew will continue refining the city's heritage risk management framework and further embedding the framework into the city's project methodology. The photos that you can see here were taken during an Aboriginal Culture Heritage Survey led by Daniel Barlin, an Aboriginal party. Aside from being a really important heritage compliance action, In-field experiences such as these create powerful opportunities for us to learn about country and build relationships with our First Nations stakeholders. In this example, you can see a Dangambalan field officer showing our heritage compliance officer how to use the leaves of a native tree to make soap. This is living heritage, knowledge, culture, and tradition in action. So to sum up what I've covered so far, I've taken you through the journey of our Heritage and First Nations service. I've explained some of our service drivers, why we do what we do, and I've described 3 of our service work streams: heritage protection, heritage conservation, and heritage compliance, and highlights of their work program. Mal will now provide insight into the 4th work stream within our service, First Nations engagement. Over to you, Mal. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone.
G'day, Mel.
Chair,
Just if you
councillors and
bring the microphone down a little bit, that's great. Thank you.
colleagues. I'm delighted to be presenting to the committee this morning on our First Nations engagement stream. The stream outcome is that the city actively manages its First Nations relationships and fosters engagement that is respectful and inclusive, recognising all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the spirit of reconciliation. First of all, I'd just like to share a little bit of information about me. As you know, we're all great storytellers, our mob, and I'm no different. I'm a proud Githable woman of the bordering Bundjalung Nation. My grandmother's country is near Kyogle, northern New South Wales. Her people got relocated to a mission known as Muli Muli over the back of the Bow Desert Border Ranges. I grew up with my Aboriginal granny and my Irish-English grandfather, living as part of our family unit on Widjabul country, which is Lismore, before relocating to Queensland with my immediate family, and then later with my husband to the UK for some 20 years, where I got to learn more about my English, Irish and European heritage and complete my university master's degree before returning to Australia in 2003. I believe it was during the time that I spent in the UK that I got to appreciate and enjoy cultural acceptance and respect through the wonderful multicultural society that I was a part of. I'm experienced in local, state and federal government and have extensive experience in business entrepreneurship in the form of owning and managing successful businesses internationally and nationally. In the space that I now work in, I've consulted and undertaken engagement with First Nations groups, organisations and communities and individuals across our continent, predominantly facilitating entrepreneurship through increased economic development participation, which included many tourism opportunities. I was absolutely delighted to be offered the opportunity to join the City of Gold Coast in November last year to lead the First Nations engagement and reconciliation process across the organisation. I enjoy the multicultural fabric of the Gold Coast that I now call home. So, my responsibilities, referring to the first slide, is to lead First Nations engagement for city events and projects, champion our city's reconciliation and with First Nations peoples, drive First Nations inclusion within city policy processes and procedures, and manage city First Nations relationships. The 2 major projects that I'm working on is our Reconciliation Action Plan, our Reflect RAP as we refer to it as, which was born out of city staff wanting to engage in a respectful and meaningful way with our First Nations people. Our Reflect RAP is the first stage of our reconciliation journey. The other project is our Strategic First Nations Engagement Framework. It's an internal-facing document helping staff to navigate their way respectfully in the First Nations space. And just to put some context to that document, there is a low level of understanding of First Nations business and engagement across the city, and as such, the city, through development of the Strategic First Nations Engagement Framework, it will guide staff on best practice of how to engage with First Nations people to create mutually beneficial opportunities. Who do we engage with and why? First Nations engagement is a highly contentious area which needs to be navigated sensitively. It's important to have someone experienced who can navigate, establish and facilitate respectful engagement processes to create harmonious relations across our city in order for us all to work together towards creating opportunities and making this beautiful city greater. Our native title parties are always our first point of contact as the Aboriginal party who holds rights and interests that they hold claim for, and we work with our First Nations organisations such as Kalwin, Wairaka, Narangwal and the community to collaborate and engage with on city initiatives to explore and provide opportunities in areas such as community health, employment, economic development and tourism. And just on the tourism note, statistics from Tourism Australia state that in 2019, 1.4 million international visitors, 17%, participated in an Indigenous tourism experience while visiting Australia. 6% year-on increase since 2010. For domestic travellers, the figure was 1 million, an increase of 13% each year on since 2013. In terms of the economic development opportunities, being able to compete with the best of the best for Indigenous tourism, people travel to the outback for authentic First Nations cultural experiences. In relation to this point, at a recent City Tourism Consultation Forum, the appetite for an increase in nature-based and cultural experiences across industry leaders was significantly of high importance. Our city staff have the appetite and understand the outcomes attached to successful First Nations engagement. Our city acknowledgement, and some of you will probably recognise Uncle John Graham there, who works very closely with us at the city. Why do we pay respects and undertake a welcome to country and acknowledgement of country? As our Aboriginal clans hunted and gathered across the continent, we welcomed each other into one another's country. It is respectful to welcome visitors into our country and acknowledge the longest surviving culture in the world, celebrating over 65,000 years of existence. It is personally rewarding for me to be leading our city's reconciliation journey. I'm excited to be working with Anne and our various streams as we seek to raise the profile of cultural heritage in order to bring to life our rich, diverse heritage so that we can facilitate and create opportunities for the city to be recognised as a leader in this space. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. Awesome. So I've got a question. If anyone else has got questions, I just got a question. It sounds like this team is quite a new team and was established not that long ago. And my recollection is we adopted in the special budget some positions. What did the organisation do about that legislation that is on the first slide prior to there being officers allocated to this work?
That was before my time, Chair, so I'm going to ask Anne to respond to that question.
Yeah,
Thank you for your question, Chair, and it's a wonderful question. So before our newly formed team, we were in a different area of the organisation. And for the most part, it was me, myself and I covering off on practically everything that we've presented today. Okay. So I think we're in a very different space now in our new department with our newly formed team, with a wonderful team of dedicated and professionals to deliver this service. That's
great. Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? That's great. All right. I'll move that the presentation be noted. Councillor Wilkinson will second that. Does anyone want to speak against it? All those in favour? That motion is carried. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, team. Appreciate you. We've got Mark now and Jody. Talk about sports precinct. Gold Coast Sports Precinct Concept Plan. Welcome. Thanks, Mark.
Good morning, councillors. Speak so loud.
There's a button you need to press to make that work. There you go.
Good morning, councillors. I'll start again. The Gold Coast Sports Precinct potentially holds the greatest potential of all the broader Southeast Queensland sport precincts. This is a direct quote I heard from a member of the state government earlier this year, and I think it draws us to a lot of the attention that we're going to talk through shortly. My name's Mark Henser. I'm the GM of Venues Gold Coast, and to the left of me is Aaron Palmer. Aaron's the manager of Major Venues, which looks after all our indoor centres, but also our aquatic centres as well. Today I come here to present our plan and we are focused on creating a master plan for this precinct. It's a long-term plan that will be staged. The plan will develop a vision for a sporting precinct that can service and encourage local, regional and national sporting engagement, encourage healthy living and stimulate the visitor economy and inspire the next generation of both elite and community-based sports people and athletes in the lead up to 2032 and beyond. Further, what's key for any proposed plan is it builds upon and complements the existing activities within this precinct. Community needs to stay at the heart of this precinct. Today I'll provide you an overview of what we've discussed so far. I'll give you a brief intro into the site, the demand we are currently experiencing, but more also the demand we potentially are experiencing, some plans, milestones for the master plan, including some outcomes and considerations, and some prelim work that our consultants have actually done already with some of our stakeholders. The plan at this stage is to come back to this committee early next year with a concept for endorsement, so we can then go back and do some detailed designs. To stress, this is a long-term plan, and it's vital for us to engage all our key stakeholders along the journey. The slide in front of everyone at the moment is basically a quick little overview of the site. As you know, it's a complex site. This site has actually freehold land and state trust land. What's really unique about this site is it allows a lot of interface between elite and community sporting facilities and users. We also have a significant road right in the middle of the precinct, around Broadbeach Road. And on the south of the complex, it's sort of broken up into a number of different precincts, but on the south we have 9 community fields, which all experience major flooding at certain stages, which can impact our ability to use those fields. And to the north of them, we have a precinct which has 2 elite fields, 2 indoor centres, 17 multi-use courts. We have People First Stadium. We also have a childcare centre on the state land. It's quite a unique site. Slide in front of you at the moment actually just paints a really strong picture of our current users. We've got 3 major broad category users. We have elite sport, community and events. And you can see where they're currently using that site at the moment. What you'll see there, the site, when we do a plan, we really need to focus on a blended, integrated approach across the site so that we can all benefit. One of the big draw cards at the moment is a lot of the users don't think we can operate simultaneously, so that's something we need to work through in the plan. Thought I'd give a little update on current performance for last financial year at the precinct. Last year we had 60,000 bookable hours, and I'll talk on the next slide on the categories of those bookable hours. We had over 2 million patrons come to this venue, so that's also including People First. And then economic benefit from events, so national state sporting organisations, music and cultural events. It's estimated $136 million in economic benefit to the city. So a significant site which does a lot more than just sport. Here's a bit of a table over the last 5 years, and what probably draws you here is we've increased pretty much double of our bookings back in 2019. So about 30,000 hours of bookable hours. We're now over 60,000 hours this year. And you also see our visitations have increased from about 700,000 to 1.5 million. So the site has experienced significant growth, and we keep hearing that there's more and more growth coming, or wanting to come, I should say. As I said, we are potentially experiencing more growth, and we need to consider some number of factors when we're going through this. When you look at the gender requirements, for example, when the Suns built their TNA, they didn't have a female football team.
So just what's their team or TNA? TNA,
sorry, Training and Administration Building.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You're just going to cool it on the acronyms.
Sorry about that. Their Training and Administration Building, they didn't have an AFLW team. They now have an AFLW team who doesn't have the elite standards that other AFLW teams have. They've also probably got the smallest footprint across all the 18 AFL clubs. So that's one example, but then you also know that community sport within female participation is increasing significantly. So something we need to consider. We are getting significant growth in sporting and community groups wanting to use the site, music and cultural groups, and we've also had more high-performance teams over the last 12 months express an interest to use this site short-term or long-term. We also need to consider the 2032 games, and it's more about this site could accommodate and benefit from the games. It's not a driving factor in our plan, but we think we need to look at it further as well from a demand point of view. And then further, the Gold Coast Sporting Hall of Fame, which is currently at Owen Park in Southport. We believe this could be a great opportunity to come to our premier sporting precinct and have our Sporting Hall of Fame at this precinct. So 2 million plus patrons can visit this site regularly and visit some of the memorabilia.
You guys okay? You got any questions? You all right? You're all good? All good?
Cool. My slide just went cut. With all this information, we've decided it's time to have a review and update our plan for this site, with a focus on proactively managing our users, optimising the site's functionality, but also making sure we unify the whole community. We're looking at 3 major outcomes that we're trying to achieve for our users. First and foremost, most important, is the community. We need facilities that serve the community needs, but also the growing demand of the community. All decision-making must have the community at heart. Elite. The site needs to foster elite development, but also become a destination venue for many other organisations wanting to come here. And then commercialisation or events. We believe if we look at the whole site and possibly we could look at some commercialisation elements, whether it be through allied health or through more tenants. So considerations with the site. We've got a number of considerations what we need to do with the plan when we do a concept plan. One is our site optimisation. When you go to the site, there's a lot of lazy space or unused space. So it's how can we convert that lazy space or unused space and activate it better? For example, how do we activate the river edge? How do we activate the front area between the road and the indoor centres? How do we activate the playing fields on the south side better? Broader capabilities. This site is in the middle of a broader sporting precinct, if you think about it. We have many other sporting precincts. When you've got local schools, you've got RDK Sports, you've got Royal Pines, you've got golf courses. So how can we make sure that we complement those users as well and not duplicate? High performance programming. As we said, there's a little bit of a demand for increasing high performance programming here, but how do we look at sharing facilities and sharing shared facilities use? So we don't need 3 or 4 gyms, we don't need 3 or 4 pools. How can we share that if we have multiple high performance teams at this site? Integration. We need our users to operate when multi-users are on site. We need them to operate independently. Sorry, I've already said that. We need them to operate independently when there's multiple users on site. Legacy. as I said before, we aren't creating a 2032 venue through this plan. However, it will benefit and not become a driving factor, and we need to view how we can accommodate. Transport, probably the biggest consideration we need to do, and probably the largest consideration we had in the stakeholder feedback. How do we look for better connection, both active and passive options? How do we make sure there's better connection from the south and the north? So therefore, we went to tender about 2 or 3 months ago, and we got a great tender proposition from Populous and Urbis. So they did a joint application, which is great. They've now assembled an award-winning team.
So Populous are the architects that designed the stadiums.
They did, yeah, they both did the first master plan and People First. Yes. So we're very fortunate we've got people that did, or organisations did the first. They're both very innovative in their thinking, and they've got a lot of experience actually at this site and more broadly across other venues across not just the state but across the country. So as you can see here, this is the deliverables and the process that we're starting the journey with. We're actually at the start of the journey. I'll be honest, we've moved probably a little bit to the vision brief at this stage, but you can see really in the first sort of 3 months was try to get a really good understanding of the site. There's been a lot of work already at this site previously, so they looked at a lot of that sort of previous information, our consultants, and then they've developed a stakeholder engagement plan where they've gone out and started to doing some stakeholder engagement. Some of that has already started, and I will talk to you a little bit from a high level point of view in some of the slides where they've got to. From there, once they've finished the stakeholder engagement, they go to a bit of a testing model where they'll look at 2 or 3 designs and then sort of retest that with those users to sort of refine some of those designs to a bit more of a one concept plan, and then they'll submit a concept plan which will sort of come back to council or come back to this committee early in the next year to start developing some more designs. Stakeholders. This is some, but not all, that they've already consulted with. You'll see that this is, I've already said, this is a large site with multiple stakeholders. You'll see that they're broken down into a couple of different groups. So we've got community, entertainment, and elite sport. The stakeholder consultation currently has consist of one-on-one conversations with the consultants, but also 3 group sessions where there would have been about 10 or 15 users in there. So very complex site, many different users. But one thing that we've seen from these sessions is there's definitely a need and want to put the community as the driving factor, and definitely a want from the current users, and we believe in it, that we need to look after the current users first before we start expanding to try and get more users. So as I said, they've started to do some initial stakeholder engagement. We've now defined 4 major pillars, which has come out of the stakeholder engagement across the 3 users. One is transport, which I said I think it's the #1 in all 3 different users. There's a need for a better connection of services. Car parking came up particularly in the community users, the lack of car parking at times. A bridge connection from north to south was something that came up from most of our stakeholders to try and create that integration, but also that safety from crossing Nerang Broadbeach Road. And then how do we function better at big events from transporting? It definitely came from the elite side and also the entertainment side, that we don't function that well for big events. Integration, as I said really quickly before, there's significant lazy space within this precinct or unused space. So how do we become more efficient in the use, and how do we create greater integration between the south and north precinct, but also the indoor centres and the playing fields? Signage is another one that sort of came up quite prominent as well. So it's how we sort of have some great signage, but how we blend the whole site in a better approach. Capacity. #1 pain point for community was there's a feel that they do get bumped at certain times of the year when other major events come in. And there was definitely, as I said before, a need to look after our current users better before we start sort of growing even further.
Morning, Councillor Hamill.
But capacity came up in all 3 as well. And then a circular economy and sustainability, which was really pleasing to hear. There was definitely a want and need from our users that how can we share our services better across the precinct. This was actually driven by our elite organisations when we spoke to them, but also how do we but how do we also make sure that we reduce maintenance costs moving forward? If we do build anything, let's make sure we are sustainable in our building and make sure that our maintenance costs are as low as we can possibly get. This slide really shows the weighting of the feedback from the 3 users. So the 4 pillars have sort of been weighted on what they felt was the most important. What you're seeing, as I said before, from the events and elite side, it's really transport to and from the precinct. From a community, it's really the capacity. There's 15 indoor courts there. Gold Coast Basketball are our major user there. They use it for over 5,000 hours. They probably want to use it further if they could. But yeah, there's definitely a capacity need that we need to consider. And then integration, the circular economy was important to all, but probably not a major factor across those 4 pillars.
Can I ask a question about that comment you just made? You said that basketball use it for 5,000 hours.
Yep.
What's the next closest?
Don't know on the top of my head.
It'd be great to get that. If you want to take it on notice, I'm happy for you to take it on notice. But yeah, I'm just interested, if basketball's at 5,000 and they're the biggest user, it'd be great to know. If you're going to take it on notice, I'll have the top 5, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought there might be I'd be interested to know how far.
I have seen it. I just don't remember the top of my head. Yeah, but we'll send it. We'll send it through.
Obviously, my disclosed conflict of interest is that on Tuesday night I play in the Masters League there. So just
it's cool. But that's 5,200 hours basically. They're already booked for this year.
Great. Oh, sorry, Councillor Munn.
Just a question on elite sport. Is that elite sport users, or it also encompasses elite sport viewers? So.
Through the chair, the stakeholder stuff was just the users. So to go detail with that, with the stakeholder stuff, we did do stakeholder stuff with the Suns. We did have the NBL at that stage a couple of months ago, and we also had the Titans in the conversation, plus Squash Australia, who are currently there, BMX, or Australian Cycling, who are currently there, and then like Netball Queensland, who can probably do a bit of both as well. Yep.
Cool. Great. Go on, mate.
That's it. Is that it?
Question. Sorry.
Perfect timing. As I said, I hope you have it was a short and sharp presentation, but I hope you get a good understanding of what we're trying to achieve at this precinct. It's really, we're starting the journey. We've got a lot of stakeholder stuff to still go. We've got a number of testing. I'm really excited where this precinct will be able to get us to. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is unlock this site to its full potential, and we believe there's avenues to do that.
I've got a question, but I'll throw to you guys first. Councillor Castro, then Councillor Munn, and then go ahead.
Yeah, the only question I've got is it? Thank you. Yeah, I'm new to this. I didn't realise that. So.
Yes, I say. Just ask Councillor Doran. He's been around for a while. So just ask him if you need any help with your microphone or other tips. He's very happy to help.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
You'll keep, Joe. Through you, Mr. Chair. Is it too late to incorporate the Emerald Lakes site as part of this? Because it really is a big part of that overall sports precinct.
Hey, through the chair. Sorry, is this more the high performance tender, or is this the actual? So Emerald Lakes across the road, the golf course?
No, I'm talking about those 2 sporting fields which we have said are going to be utilised for sport. We don't know, of course, yet what the outcome is going to be, but that is going to be a site that's going to be activated in quite a major way.
So just so for people who are watching online, you're referring to the sites that are maybe less than a kilometre east of here?
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Through the chair, it's one of the considerations was definitely that broader capability and capacity across the whole precinct. So they are looking at that. They probably, from a functional point of view, if we do detailed designs, we haven't done any detailed designs yet. So it's really broadly, yes, it's been considered. That's probably what it's. Yeah, it's probably broadly considered. Yeah, it's broadly been considered. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Councillor Mutton.
Thank you, Chair. Just on those priorities of uses, the pie charts, I was just wondering if any of those surprise you. I mean, for me, transport was interesting with elite sport and events, given you have to use public transport, whereas community sport, having worked in this precinct, a lot of the families expected to drive. So I thought, I was surprised by those transport figures.
Through the chair, initially I was as well. From the elite and events, it's more getting to public transport where they didn't feel there was great connection. For community, there's over 1,000 car parks on site. I think community felt if there's another event on, there's definitely significant transport issues. However, if there's not elite events going on, they felt they had enough car parking at that stage. Yep.
And as a user on a Tuesday night and other times, I feel that from when community activities are on, there's actually probably plenty of parks. It's when elite sport is occurring on site that the transport issues are the greatest issue. Yeah.
Makes sense. And just
Councillor Doran, you're after Councillor Munn.
Just query on, obviously, you're tracking sort of state government announcements. I'm aware that there was a commitment around SUNS, around the TNA, Training Administration Facility for Women's Sport, which is fantastic, but just making sure that we're aligned there.
Through the chair. So I didn't hear that. There was an announcement for Gold Coast Suns.
I believe it was, a L&P commitment around $2 million for female change room expansion. I'm not totally across the detail, but I caught it in the news. So just obviously...
Is your question, is that incorporated into our master planning?
Yeah, how are we incorporating with the state and those elite users?
So through the chair, we've got a working group at the moment that has Mark Evans, CEO of the Gold Coast Suns on it, plus a rep from Department of Sport and Transport, Major Roads, Stadiums Queensland, and City of Gold Coast as well, which are actually working through a lot of that. When we get to the detailed designs, funding's going to have to be 3-tier, without a doubt. We'll definitely consider that, and we'll be looking at that as a few announcements get moved forward. Yep,
that's great. Councillor Doran has a question.
Thank you, Chair. I note just two quick questions. The graph that indicated the time of use between community and I think it was event or elite seemed to be increasing in the event space, but quite flat on the community bookings. Is that balance concerning to the city? Around, obviously, there is a large community use of this facility.
Through the chair, it's basically they're at capacity, those courts, so we can't actually put any more community on them. So if you have a look back in, I think it's 2022, they're nearly at capacity. The space that has grown, you are correct, Councillor, it is through the event space that we are doing.
So the actual space that's available for community purpose is at capacity, and the amount of space that's available for elite and events is not at capacity. And so that's why you're seeing the event going up, because there's times where the event spaces are vacant and can be booked, but the reason that's stable is because you walk into that stadium and every day there's someone that you can't get any more in there.
I guess that speaks to the need to protect that community space. And the follow-up question to that is, part of this plan is, and it's quite a mature building that houses that community space, especially on the northern side of the road. Is that part of the plan for expansions, just conceptually at this stage?
Through the chair, all options are getting considered. We believe, with what the community is telling us, there's a demand for more courts at that precinct.
Significantly more.
Yeah.
So with on page, in attachment 1, it's got the stakeholders in a graph. I'm just curious as to whether the size of the circles in the stakeholders indicate any particular importance, and how they all got onto that list. Because some of them, from my read there, aren't obviously within the precinct. So is more weight given to, for example, the Suns, Experience Gold Coast and Kicks Entertainment, given the size of their circle, compared to, pick one out, Squash Australia?
Through the chair, could pick up. They are actually a representation of how much they use the site, but they're broken down into those categories. So when you look at entertainment, Experience Gold Coast uses it more than any other user with Kicks Entertainment, where Gold Coast Hall of Fame's from a smaller point of view.
Is the Gold Coast Hall of Fame there at all at the moment? Is the Gold Coast Hall of Fame there at all at the moment?
No, but it's more future as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is an aspirational aspirational usage graph, for want of a better word.
Yeah. Overlay with the current use
graphical, as well. Graphical representation of how we think it might be used in the future.
Yes. And through the chair, this isn't all the users that we've done stakeholder with. It's probably most, but there is a couple that are missing as well, I think.
I think I'd also thank you, Chair. Just if Mark would also just outline. Obviously, it's freehold state land. Part of these assets, some of these assets are state assets. Some, I understand, council assets. So, how do you work through the balance of developing out a precinct which isn't entirely in your control? Understanding the comments you made before about the tiered funding levels that will be required, but can you step through how that might be delivered, please?
You've just really captured the complexity of Mark's job, but go on.
Through the chair. So we've actually partnered with the state in the development of this. They've joint funded and provided some supporting funding to undertake the master planning, and we've established a senior steering committee to oversee the development of it, which has both state representation and the city representation. We've agreed to look at the site in total instead of, at the moment, there is a divider line that runs just sort of north of the stadium, and it creates quite an operational barrier. So what we've agreed is to look at how do we maximise the overall site so we can fit more in, basically. So it's been a good process to date.
So can you just clarify what you meant by that imaginary line? So just north of the stadium, maybe, Mark, if you could point, is it? Yeah, so
and then up.
South of that is
state land and run by Stadiums Queensland. So they have the two lower fields, the two lower oval fields, and the Suns childcare centre is all on state land.
And do we have the southwestern fields? Is all that us?
That's all us.
And that's the area. Is that the area that's referred to as Alabaster?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
So I had a question that actually related, that it doesn't seem to have talked about here. We've obviously got thousands and thousands of people visiting this precinct, and the biggest issue that people have talked about is transport. Nothing in what you've shown today talks about accommodation. Is that part of the scope?
It's considered, as I've said, everything's considered. It probably didn't come glowing from the three users, but we're definitely looking at commercialising the site.
Yes.
So yes,
it just occurs to me, if we've got a significant issue with transport, which is getting people to and from this, from wherever they are, and events is such a big part of it, that there should probably be a conversation about whether a portion of the land could be allocated for some sort of public-private partnership to deliver on-site.
They haven't started actually drawing buildings yet, what they could look at, but there's definitely a need and want for multi-use commercial buildings. What that feels like, don't know.
Yeah. And Councillor Castro and Councillor Doran, I think, talked, or maybe it was Councillor Martin, talked about the capacity of the indoor stadium. So one of the elements of scope is to expand the footprint of the stadium itself to be bigger than what it is. To accommodate more courts.
Yeah, we need more courts. There's a demand for more courts at that precinct, yes.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
So I think that'd be a driving factor in their, when they start doing their concepts, I believe they'll start having some more courts there. Yep.
And Populous and Nervous are obviously working pretty hard now, in that you had a timeline of what phases we're in, and I'm assuming we're not too far away from seeing some aspirational pitches.
Very close.
And you're expecting that to be early next year?
Sorry, no, the drawing, we'll start getting some designs. So they'll have rough three designs. They've gone one which is a light touch, which is just a couple of things to help for the demand. They've got one which will go for a medium long-term outcome, and then one very bold outcome. From there, we'll get those three maps, and we'll start working with our stakeholders on which way to go.
Yeah,
So that's going to happen. That'll happen this side of Christmas.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
So so councillors can expect that there might be some pictures of some, aspirational ideas about where buildings might be on the broader site, and configuration of how to get people from one side of the road to the other in the next couple of months.
Yes. And then from there, we'll do all that testing, and then we'll come up with one design.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you guys have any other questions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Chair, it's probably more for you specifically, I guess, just with our forward committee plan, was that indicated on that? Just if you could clarify which line that one was, that's all.
Might not be. It's not there yet. But I think it looks like the draft master plan will probably come in January.
At this stage,
we'll talk about it in December pre-Christmas, and then in January, February, we'll have it on an agenda, I'd suggest. So you won't come to committee blind. You'll have been kind of nominally briefed and provided some sort of information workshop prior. Councillor Doran.
Thank you, Chair. Mark mentioned a little earlier in the presentation, I might get the words wrong, but activation of the riverbank. Can you speak to what that might look like, given that it is obviously prone to flooding?
Well, probably through the chair. There's a lot. When you look at this site, there's a lot of lazy. And I use the word lazy because it's what the consultants are using, but it's unused space. One of the things is the river sort of area where it's actually not getting used at all at the moment. And I understand there is flooding, so you need to go through all that sort of planning. But early on, like how can you put a tracker around there for people to do active walking, for example? How do you, not have all that dead space for not getting used? At the moment, we've got two maintenance buildings. We have one, the state have one. They're sort of in the block. How can you probably move them to be maybe in different space as well? So it's sort of looking at that whole unused space, but we think there's an opportunity in that sort of river area.
So for active travel and community walk space and public spaces?
At this stage, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and that just folds on, Chair, just to one last question. In the capacity on the feedback to date slide, it does say one of the pieces of feedback received was allied health business space. And so it comes back to my query before around the indoor sports precinct and the community use. Is there an element it being considered that commercial activities are considered on the space, or are we going to look to skew sort of more towards community uses rather than for example, cool beans and childcare use? So is there a view of the city at this point around commercial uses on the site?
Through the chair, as I think community is the heart for every decision making in this. There has been, when we've spoken to the users and how we can keep some of those users longer on the site. So community actually expressed a real strong interest and need for having allied health, but it's how you sort of complement your current users as well on the site. But I think when we do the designs, you'll start seeing multi-use buildings, and what that looks like and feels like will be where we do the testing from.
But it's not a requirement to pay for the community side, that we need activated commercial part of it, no?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions? It's pretty exciting. Can we have another 3 of these? Like in the city, I reckon we need another 3 just like this. So one at a time. Okay, one at a time. Do you have any questions, Councillor Hamill? Do you want one up north? That's why you don't control the finances. I'm very, very familiar with the finances, and I'm absolutely sure we have the cash to do it. This is what we use the cash for. Would someone like to move or note the presentation? Councillor Castro, thank you. Second by Councillor Martin. Does anyone want to speak against sport? Does anyone hate sport? No?
No, through Mr. Chair, I don't really need to speak to it, but there was one interesting thing in that presentation that I hoped everyone picked up on, and that was that 137 million generated in income. And I just wanted to make the comment that, again, that's the importance of major sporting events. It's not the actual event. As I said at the time, it's not about the Commonwealth Games, it's about the legacy, and it's not about the Olympic Games, it's about the legacy. And there are so many people out there saying that this was going to be a white elephant, and well, it's a very productive white elephant. So
absolutely, and knowing, like, because every Tuesday night I'm there playing Masters basketball and the place is packed. Like it's packed on one side with netball and one side on our side with basketball, and it's just chockers. And the reality is, there's a bunch of people just keeping active and healthy, and it's
fantastic.
Whilst there's $137 million of economic impact driven by Division 8, there's also a bunch of healthy people that is lowering the impact on the health system of us, running around as.
It's a very good, important additional point.
So, which isn't incorporated into that 137. All those in favour of noting the presentation? That motion is carried. Mark and team, thank you. We now have a very exciting presentation, and I want to just kick off this presentation just with a bit of an acknowledgement, because our presenter today has been with the city for some time. Chris Maynard, welcome. Chris has served the city for 40 years. He's retiring in May next year. He's let us know he's leaving us, but he's worked as a lifeguard since 1983. He started his career as a permanent lifeguard at Surfers Paradise Beach from 1983 until 1990. He was lifeguard superintendent from 1990 to 2020. He was the chief lifeguard from 2021. Lifeguarding is in the family DNA. His father-in-law is a previous chief lifeguard, and I think his 2 children are also lifeguards. His dedication, enthusiasm, professionalism and commitment to the community and lifeguarding is unwavering. He's made a significant impact on beach safety and the overall experience for everyone who enjoys our beaches over the years he's served us. And he's not only led by example in his work, but he's been a mentor and friend to many in the lifeguard team, teaching our next generation of lifeguards to be the best they can be. Chris, thank you for serving our city so selflessly for so long, saving lives, but also training the next generation to save lives as well. 40 years is a bloody lot of time, and I'm super proud to have you presenting to us today, but also just for your service. Can I just offer a bit of a round of applause?
Sorry, I was just going to say you're looking damn good on it, Chris. So
hey.
Obviously, it's obviously good to be a lifeguard because you're wearing well, mate.
Thank you.
Well, Jim, not to add any extra pressure to your presentation, mate, but thank you.
No, thank you for that. That was definitely a surprise. I mean, it's been an amazing career, and it's crazy to think, where those 40 years have gone. I definitely don't feel that old, but I mean, it's been an amazing journey, and it's all about the people. The people that I've worked with, the people that I get to meet on the beaches as well, and the city that we work for. I mean. Working with the City of Gold Coast, I mean, there's been a lot of changes in my 40-odd years, but it's been a great place to work, and that's the thing with it still with all our staff as professional lifeguards is that, we respect who we work for, and we're proud to work for the city. So, and that's one of our mottos that, once you come on board, we work for the city, we're professional lifeguards, and we do our best. So, but yeah, I'm just, pretty rapt that I'm going to be finishing soon. I'm quite healthy and happy, and looking forward to it. I know Councillor Castro has been here a long time as well, and you have
and now you're meant to wax lyrical about how well I'm wearing. It's a reciprocal thing, Chris. It's reciprocal, Chris.
Right. You're looking amazing. You still look the same.
Look at this bromance blossoming in front of us. Well, Chris, tell us about Japan.
Right. Yeah. Well, good morning, councillors, and. Obviously, I was going to say my name and who I was, but you've already done that. But look, thank you for the opportunity to present a brief overview of our recent lifeguard exchange to Kanagawa Prefecture. If you have any questions at the end of the presentation, I'll be happy to answer those. Our staff recently returned from Kanagawa, Japan, continuing the 34-year relationship between the City of Gold Coast and Kanagawa Prefecture. It's the city's longest-standing international civic relationship via the Mayor's International Relations Program. Manager Jim Dixon and I and 3 of our senior staff, Rachel Eddy, Joel Nandes and Glenn Van Drunen, were a part of the exchange. And the exchange commenced in 2000 and has continued biannually into the present time, where we host Japanese lifeguards, usually around November. Every second year, and the city sends 3 of our experienced lifeguards to the prefecture for their peak summer season, which is usually around July, August. Where is Kanagawa Prefecture? Kanagawa Prefecture is directly sort of south of Tokyo and lies in the foothills of Mount Fuji, and the capital Yokohama is the main city, and there's a population around 10 million in that actual prefecture, so it's a massive area. Within the prefecture, there's 19 cities and only 15 patrolled locations, which is quite amazing, along with 50 kilometres of coastline in Sagami Bay. So it's a really big area and similar to the Gold Coast. On this exchange, not only are we engaged in our typical activities of educating and upskilling the prefecture lifeguards, we also participated in the inaugural Japanese Drowning Prevention Symposium as keynote speakers. Our host provided us with an action-packed itinerary, which saw us travel the length of the 50-kilometre coastline, meeting lifeguard supervisors and staff, and learning all about the challenges of each location along the coastline, similar to our coastline. Key activities included fitness training in the ocean in the mornings, swimming, paddling and running, which was quite challenging with the ocean conditions at the moment or through that time, the water temp was like 31 degrees. So it was like swimming in a hot bath. It was no relief at all. So it wasn't real comfortable. And our water temp at the moment is 21 degrees. So it was quite incredible how hot it was. The city's delegation participated in 3 official engagements, which were formal welcome to the prefecture. The first being with the governor of Kanagawa Prefecture, His Excellency Kuriwa. It was a very special and culturally rich experience for the staff, engaging in probably the most formal Japanese setting we sort of come across for that week. We had the opportunity to talk to the Interior Minister prior to the engagement with the governor, and he provided us with insights into the coastal region of the prefecture, and he highlighted the Japanese connection and love of the ocean and some of the challenges that come with that. Obviously, with the population, the amount of people that get to the beaches, it's quite incredible. And this gave us great insight for the support of our engagement with other organisations during the week. There's a couple of photos of the delegation with the governor. The governor expressed his delight with the exchange, drawing similarities between the coastline and significant interest in beach culture by both residents of both regions. He also commented on the fond memories of his visit in 2015. He actually recognised me because I was there at the time when the 25th year anniversary, they put a plaque down at Burleigh Heads Beach, and he was there that time. So he was quite chuffed and recognised me, which was quite nice. We also exchanged gifts and a letter from the Mayor Tate we presented to the Governor. Our second formal engagement, we met with the Mayor of Hirasuka. This is the second largest city in the prefecture with a lot of surf beaches along the coast. The Mayor discussed the impacts of global warming and concerns of the increased beach erosion occurring across the coastline. He was really concerned about the amount of erosion they are getting with the increased typhoons and storm events during the summer months. His other desire was to hopefully increase the patrol. It was interesting, patrolling outside of their usual period, which is 8 weeks. They only patrol July and August, but he's trying to, with other government agencies and other cities within the prefecture, trying to push the extension of the patrol time leading into September and even June due to the global warming. He feels like there's not much time to get to the beach, and when they close the beaches, it's closed for swimming, but a lot of craft users use that time. So the staff and I worked at various patrol beaches, which was pretty tough actually, because the temperature was up around 35 to 38 degrees most days, and the humidity was 97%, so it was quite uncomfortable. We reviewed operations, providing surveillance and rescue techniques and different strategies that we use. So it was
Councillor Curtis.
Bless you. Our lifeguard team were impressed by the professionalism of the lifeguards and their dedication and enthusiasm towards their work. Jim Dixon and I were keynote speakers at the inaugural Japan Drowning Prevention Symposium, presenting an overview of our city's professional lifeguard service and operation, providing advice on applicable city practices as well. We learn about the highly collaborative support between the varying agencies that patrol and survey the coastline and how their roles interface in regards to search and rescue. And we learn about ocean users and how they impacted rescues and drowning statistics. It's quite interesting during the dynamics of the amount of people that actually get to the beach. Obviously they have a lot of drownings, but the amount of people that get swept out to sea they love floating on devices, Japanese. I mean, they just get on sup boards and floating things, and they just tend to drift out with the wind. So there's a lot of rescues way out to sea, which the Coast Guard and the Navy end up picking up. It was quite amazing. Yeah, it was mind-blowing actually listening to the other agencies with their statistics on the amount of rescues they do out to sea. So quite a bit different to us. Our winds are blowing us inshore. The host families are vital to the success of the exchange. It once again provided tremendous cultural and professional development for our staff who are hosted in homestay accommodation. Definitely a unique experience for all of us. We were overwhelmed by the generosity and respect from the lifeguard families, and we were certainly well looked after. And the efforts in organising other social gatherings from the families was very much appreciated. And very thankful that they had great air conditioning units in their houses, I'll tell you.
Because at 40 degrees it was.
Yeah. Actually, one of our staff, Glenn, he was in a homestay situation, and something wrong with the air conditioning, and he had to sleep out in the lounge room with a pretty vicious dog. But he didn't have any sleep the whole trip. He said the air conditioner wasn't working out in the lounge room, and he just had no sleep. It was pretty tough for him. But anyway. Look, the most mornings were spent in the water with training programs conducted with the youth and nippers of Kamakura area and the city of Hirasuka. We were greeted with enthusiasm and desire to learn and improve. Our staff were like rock stars. Actually, all the youth really loved every minute of their time with our team. It was quite special. It was inspirational to see our staff coaching and instructing the future lifeguards from Kanagawa. Just some key insights with this slide in particular, the beach matting, as per the photo on this slide, the increased community programs, which I've noticed. I've been over in Japan myself. Warren Young and myself went over in 2005 as part of the exchange, and I'd noticed there's so much difference as far as, but the beach matting right along the coastline, and they actually did get some of that ideas from the Gold Coast, which was quite amazing in our discussions. But they're permanently in place throughout the summer, so very similar to our city. The impact of global warming, as I discussed, and the effects it's having on the beaches in Japan, with beach erosion becoming more frequent during the typhoons, we were able to connect with the prefecture's administration and linked it to our beach engineering team here on the coast, and they're coming out in November, actually, a delegation to learn about a sand replenishment program, which is quite interesting. Extra focus is being placed with pathways and support for recruiting and retaining lifeguards, and with the large beach crowds during summer, the priority is to increase patrol times, as I mentioned, outside of the regular summer period. And just finishing off, the importance of the connect to other city areas through the exchange program will no doubt ensure the success of the program if it continues. It was definitely a privilege to represent the city once again, enhance our long-term relationship. And it's the quality of people is so important when participating in exchange programs, and the efforts of our staff ensured once again that the bonds between the prefecture and the city of Gold Coast remain strong. So thank you very much. We'll just finish off with a few slides.
That's great.
Thank you.
Councillor Marshall, you want to say a few words?
Oh, no, thank you, and through you, Chair. I loved it, Chris. And I guess from a sporting sport, we see Japanese lifesaving on the improve. But do we have any, lifeguards that you've come across in this program come out this way, to be on, lifeguards here?
Yeah, through the Chair. Yes, Councillor Marshall. We've actually, part of the program since it started in 2000, in those early years, we had a couple of lifeguards that did come over and try out for our positions as casual lifeguards. And we've got 3 lifeguards at the moment from Japan through that exchange program over the years working for us at the moment. So it's just great to see two of the girls, Hiroku and Haruka, are great competitors themselves. I think they're in Karawa Surf Club as well, and they're working casually. They have been working casually for 5 years now with us, and they do an amazing job. And Yutaka Kuchiki, he worked with us for 10 years, and he did go home for a short period of time, and he did a physiotherapy course and become a physio, and then he actually remarried over here, and now he's working back with us. So and he actually travelled on his own accord to back to Japan with us, and he was part of the team as such. He was our interpreter, and he just loves what he does, and linked us back up with the family. So it was quite special. But yes, it's great to see that some of the lifeguards get inspiration from our staff and come over and try out and work for us as well.
Other questions? I wanted to ask about that exchange piece. Is there an opportunity for Gold Coast-based lifeguards to serve the Kanagawa Prefecture in that peak season for them? Given there's obviously a lot of people.
Yeah, I probably think there would be. I mean, it's only sort of an 8-week block that they patrol, and so
because it's kind of our down season, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is definitely our down season. So, I mean, yeah, there would be opportunities there, definitely, if they were required. I know they're really struggling, actually, to retain good lifeguards over there due to that 8-week period. They've got nothing else for them. So a lot of them are university students, and so they're trying to make a career for it. So they want to try and extend the patrol period and also move them into maybe the fire services and things like that, so they can get good quality staff. They tend to lose a lot of staff, and also trying to retain and get new lifeguards is problematic for them.
Yeah. When you travelled, obviously it sounds like you met a bunch of mayors and governors. Have we ever sent like officials from like councillor level with you to Kanagawa before? No.
Right. Other than no. So obviously this year being Jim, which is great. Jim Dixon, our manager, and myself, and Warren Young and myself back in 2005. But other than that, no, we haven't. Not that I know of. I'm not quite sure if other delegations have been sent from council at other times, but like outside of the.
But not as part of this.
Yeah, not as part of the lifeguard. No.
Okay.
It'd be great to see actually, because it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's a lot of.
Yeah, the idea of mutual respect between our two cities. Obviously, you guys, it's great having you guys share on our behalf. But the idea that that Councillor Marshall, as a elite athlete, beach athlete himself, he might fit in quite nicely with unique skills of the councillors. Does anyone have any other questions? Great. Well, I will move that it's actually that the council note the presentation as the recommendation, not the committee. Yeah, so we're making a recommendation to the council. So, or I think it's actually that the presentation be noted. Yeah, that the presentation be noted. Chris, thank you for your service for so long, and obviously enjoy the last 8 months, 7 months. I hope it's great, but yeah, thank you for being a part of and for your presentation today as well. But yeah, most of all, your selflessness over so many years has just not gone unnoticed, and we really appreciate you and your team.
Thank you for your kind words. Thank you.
I'm happy to move it. Does anyone, Councillor Martin's happy to second it. That's great. Does anyone want to speak against lifeguards? No. All those in favour? That motion is carried. That brings us to the end of our presentations today. Is there any other general business that anyone want to raise today?